2 months ago, and some change, Ancient Evil released to surprising critical acclaim, with some even going as far as to call it the next Horizon-Drop. For you boomers out there, that's the modern equivalent of the next Reese. But is it actually that good, or was it just the honeymoon phase in action? Well, I can't tell you for sure, because opinions are subjective, and what I, or any other baby toy reviewer on the internet says doesn't really matter all that much compared to what you personally thought about it. Hi, welcome to my channel, where I can take the fun out of literally anything. But, per tradition, before we tackle the Ancient Evil, let's get up to speed on what's changed since late March. Without a doubt, the biggest change was the long-awaited addition of server pause. What this means is that you can now pause co-op games, so no longer do you need to have someone hold a zombie while you go to the bathroom. But, and this is a big but, and I cannot lie, the feature is very buggy at the moment. I've seen reports of it lagging out non-host players and just breaking mid-match. The latter is something I've experienced firsthand. I was playing a match with a friend one day, and whenever I tried pausing, the menus would come up but the game would still continue. One step forward, one step back, I suppose. A new perk called Zombshell was added. When killing a zombie with a headshot, there's a chance that they'll leave behind an electric cloud that slows down the movement speed of all standard enemies that enter it. Additionally, all enemies affected by the cloud will take higher damage than normal. When put into the modifier slot, you'll be invisible to all enemies while standing in the cloud, much akin to Vulture Raid from Buried. Is it overpowered? Debatably. Fun? Most definitely. A couple new elixirs were added as well. Dividend Yield, talking about regeneration, Bullet Boost, and Perk Up, which grants you 4 random perks. But the best new elixir in this batch was by far Quacknarok. When activated, all standard zombies will spawn in with a duck float and quack when killed. Have you ever wondered what the tortured souls of a hellish Alcatraz island would look like if they were wearing a duck float? Well, now you know. I'm starting to see why people find Treyarch games charming. In addition to these elixirs came the return of the 4 gumballs of the apocalypse from Black Ops 3. Raindrops, near-death experience, shopping free, and the one that everyone likes to complain about for some unfathomable reason in a PvE mode, Perkaholic. I've missed you, sweetheart. 6 new weapons were added with Operation Spectre Rising, which is a hilariously edgy name straight out of DeviantArt. The Tiger Shark, Stingray, Vendetta Sniper Rifle, finally, the Ballistic Knife, the Locust from Black Ops 3, and last but not least,
the Peacekeeper Mark II, sentimental, yet savage.
I give Treyarch a lot of shit for their weapon design and feel, but I really do like the look of the Tiger Shark and the new Ballistic Knife. Along with Operation Spectre Rising came 2 new gauntlets, Dead of the Nights, which is called Super Blood Wolf Moon, I can't believe I read that name without bursting out laughing, and Ancient Evils, the Labors of Hercules. And finally, the last of the new features that came with Spectre Rising were Mark II weapon support for weapon kits, death effects for your weapons, and surprisingly, the Galil was given attachments in weapon kits. I genuinely did not expect that one, but I appreciate it nonetheless. More customization is always preferable to less. Moving on to general improvements. The post-match BOAS system was updated to show more statistics, including power-ups collected, catalyst kills, hits taken, and more. Although in true post-BO2 Treyarch fashion, it doesn't really work properly. Many of the stats do not track correctly. So if you were hoping to use this for a competition, yeah, I wouldn't. Now this next one is something I've been waiting for when did this game come out? Many theater mode issues were fixed. NPC facial animations no longer get stuck when using the skip forward function. Hit markers and power-up icons no longer display in free cam, and general stability has been improved. However, if someone from Treyarch is watching this, Catalyst and Blightfather models still do not show up in film playback. So if we could get someone on that, that would be just dandy.
Lastly, and I'm absolutely ecstatic about this one, they finally removed the annoyingly loud headshot sound on sniper rifles. Just listen. You hear that? Yeah, neither do I. It's awesome. Honestly, that unbalanced sound was the worst part of getting Dark Matter. And using the Paladin. That was pretty bad too.
In addition to positive changes, they also gimped the MOG-12 into the ground by cutting its ammo by 33% and reducing its damage by almost half. They reduced the amount of ammo in the Hades, but most hilariously, they nerfed the headshot multiplier of the RK7 by 20%. Because we all knew the RK-7 as this absurdly overpowered monster that broke the game's balance. Right? There's also still nary a peep about factions. You know, that thing that was promised to be included with this operation, but was also previously promised to be ready for launch in October. The last one isn't really a change to the game itself, or even a change at all. But a new cinematic called High Priest of Chaos was released, which shows the Order initiating a new member. There's nothing essential to the story here, or anything really useful at all, but any world building is good world building, especially since the Order has arguably been given the shaft in the story thus far. Plus, the metal materials look really nice here. So yeah, there's been a lot of updates to zombies as of late. Some good, some bad, some barely even worth talking about, but I talked about them anyway for time. But with all that out of the way, let's finally dive into Ancient Evil. As is tradition, let's start off with the things I liked, and like Final Reich and Der Eisendrache, we're gonna be here a while. The most surprising thing about the map by far is that it has sound after all. Ain't that swell? Now, I like to be told a good story as much as the next guy, but let's be real. Most people are here for the gameplay, the visuals, how the map flows, and all the new bits and bobs to play with. And in those respects, Ancient Evil brings a lot to the table. Let's start with the map design. Ancient Evil was split into two main areas, the city of Delphi and the center of the world. Both of these main areas focus largely on CQC combat, with the occasionally open area and choke points that are, and say it with me, conveniently large enough for 2 player-sized hitboxes to travel through at once. Get used to me saying that because that's pretty much every single map designed by Jason Blundell's team.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
No, of course not.
However, unlike most of their maps, Ancient Evil takes a page out of Sledgehammer's book and injects a cinematic flair into the map's progression. From the very beginning, all the zombies are held in place by the Oracle, which makes round 1 fly by. After progressing through the map a little, the player will encounter the Sentinel artifact in the amphitheater. Now normally, you just grab it, and the map's main quest will begin. However, the zombie warlord, later revealed to be Perseus, shows up and commands his pawns to kill the Chaos crew. We really need a better name for this group. Just as the group is about to be surrounded, Pegasus shows up and saves the day, unlocking the Sentinel artifact and allowing the player to progress once more. Once you've acquired the Golden Bridle and taken it to the Spartan Monument, Pegasus will bid you all to take flight, where you'll be taken to the center of the world, only to be attacked by Perseus once more. Then once you've freed the Eagles of Zeus and revealed the Ubersprengen, portals will open up that lead back to the main city. And all of that is just the Pack-a-Punch setup. There's so much more cool cinematic stuff all relegated to the main quest, which, surprisingly, is really, really good. I love being able to say that, as the last main quest I genuinely really enjoyed was probably Final Reich's casual quest. Some parts of the Darkest Shore and Nines were good, but they're still kind of a pain to complete. But back to Ancient Evil. The steps make sense both from a gameplay and story standpoint. They're solo friendly, mostly. There's multiple mid-match IGCs, and all of this is capped off with a really fun boss fight with a corrupted Pegasus and zombie Perseus. If I had to complain about this quest, which I guess I do, my only complaints would be that the raw statue step is a bit oppressive to solo players, and Perseus goes down a little too easily. That part might just be because I've done this quest like 7 times though.
The new special enemy, the Spartoi. I love their sound design, their visuals, and how they affect the gameplay loop. There are 3 Spartoi variants with different attributes. One with a shield that reflects gunfire, one with a helmet that protects it from a single lethal headshot, and standard Spartoi. None of these variants have a massive impact on gameplay like an EMZ or a Nosferatu, but they can occasionally punish players with poor accuracy, as a headshot is required to put a Spartoi down for good, or else they'll regenerate with full health. To note, a Spartoi can reanimate 3 times before it dies permanently, regardless of how it was killed. You can use this regeneration timer to your advantage though. For example, let's say you're doing a quest step in solo play, but your last zombie, a Spartoi, is bothering you. Simply kill it, and during the lengthy regeneration process, you can finish up that step that was giving you trouble, like the Spear and Gears step, the Primordial Hands. Every good map has great weapons behind it. Well, most good maps, and Ancient Evil is no different. The map features 4 primordial hands, the Hand of Hemera, the goddess of daytime, the Hand of Chiron, the ferryman of Hades who transported souls to the underworld, the Hand of Gaia, the ancestral mother of all life, and the Hand of Aranos, the primordial god of the sky. Each hand's power reflects their respective Greek character and are all devastatingly powerful. even in the higher rounds. But even better is that there is no clear best one like the Reisendrock, where the Stormbow was clearly the strongest one you could get, which made the others kinda pointless. Every hand fills a specific niche, such as Chiron's, which is good at distracting crowds, but has a relatively slow time to kill. On the other hand, Chimera's is great at clearing out targets at any range, but requires solid aim from the user and can only clear a few enemies at a time. This balance is very reminiscent of the Frozen Dawn, where each special weapon had a unique role to fill and accentuated certain playstyles. Speaking of the Frozen Dawn, the tutorial segments for the hands are a carbon copy of the Raven Trials. But hey, if you're gonna steal from the best, I suppose. Okay, Frozen Dawn isn't exactly the best, but you get the idea. One last gameplay element I really like is the addition of the Oracle's Helping Hand. These helping hands will be signified by a blue border around the player's screen. Among these gifts are opening a door for you if you don't have enough points, highlighting a buildable part around the map similar to the outlines visible in casual mode, giving you max ammo for the gun you're currently holding when low on ammo, revive you when you're downed in co-op, gives you a perk back after being revived, and aside from this, the Oracle will give you cryptic hints as to how to complete the map's main quest. Now, on paper, this sounds completely game-breaking, but in practice, these gifts only appear a couple times per game, and there is no known way to game the system, so to speak. They're almost entirely random. Aside from just being generally helpful during gameplay, these intermittent appearances help solidify the Oracle's presence in the map and adds to the map's unique gameplay. Less importantly, but still worth mentioning, it makes sense from a story standpoint. Since she's an incredibly powerful being, it's only natural for her to occasionally help out her allies. Right? The visuals. This is a category I often criticize post-Black Ops 2 Treyarch for, but the visuals of Ancient Evil are absolutely phenomenal. Because Ancient Evil isn't trying to emulate any real place, the more cartoonish, oversaturated art style of Black Ops 4 works really well in helping to create a more fantastical environment. Like Dead of the Night, each area also has a very different visual palette. Delphi is very bright and occasionally overexposed, making heavy use of warmer colors, whereas the center of the world completely lacks sunlight and uses almost every color in the rainbow, creating a very surreal environment. The giant dead woman above Pack-a-Punch and the snakes also help. Then there's the boss arena, Mount Olympus, which is a nice intermediate of the two. It's not as bright as Delphi, but not as dark as the center of the world, and utilizes much colder colors, with the exception of Pegasus's damage state, which is a bright orange and helps draw the player's eye during the fight. A very strong use of colors to convey information to the player. Good job, Treyarch. Now that we're done with gameplay and visuals, let's talk about the map's lore. Ancient Evil makes heavy use of Greek mythology by taking a similar tack that Nazi Zombies did and incorporating history and real-world legends into the events of their own story. The Oracle of Delphi, Perseus, Pegasus, Geganese, Python, Chiron's ferry to the underworld, and so much more appear within the map, with Perseus taking the role of the map's main villain. Long ago, Perseus was a great prince with a kind, fair heart, but his pride led him to believe that he was worthy enough to complete the Sentinel trial and take his place as rightful ruler of Mount Olympus. After blackmailing the Oracle into initiating the Sentinel trial by imprisoning her sisters, Perseus and his men eventually became corrupted by the chaos, and now, 1,000 years later, uses our hero's skills to complete the trial and open the gateway to Mount Olympus. One of my favorite little elements of the map's lore is that it finally makes good use of the Sentinel trials by having the city frozen in time from when the Oracle initiated the trial. So rather than looking decrepit and overrun and all sorts of horrible stuff like many Zombies maps, the city looks relatively untouched. Aside from a couple corpses and some chaos crystals, which have very nice materials, might I add. The characters. Something I've liked about the Chaos story since day one is its characters, excluding Scarlet. And Ancient Evil fine-tunes every single one of them. Diego's womanizing tendencies have been toned down a little bit, making him a bit more likable. Shaw isn't as loud and random equals funny as he was before. And Bruno? Well, nothing was really changed about him. He's just fine. But like one of my favorite elements of Dead of the Night, Dark Bruno finally comes out. We've been waiting for him to show up since Voyage, and he's finally here in all his dark, edgy glory. I've always liked when there's bonus speech in-game tied to certain characters. Richthofen's dialogue switching to Samantha mid-quest in Moon, Stuhlinger being able to hear Richthofen in the Broken Earth arc, Richthofen hearing Samantha in Classified. It's a small thing that helps give certain maps a bit more character, something I kinda wish World War II Zombies did. There, Treyarch did something better than Sledgehammer, and I admitted it. Please don't take me off the payroll, guys, I really need this. But the character that gets the best treatment here is none other than good old Scarlet Rhodes.
Honestly, before the map launched, I was 100% convinced. Okay, even if I don't like the map, I'll at least finally get a chance to rant about how much Scarlet sucks. Because there's no way in hell they're gonna change her. And now I look like a damn fool. Just like with Dead of the Night.
Well, I'm tripping balls, nigga.
To preface, I've always hated this character. She was needlessly mean-spirited, had a shit attitude, and was so sickeningly in love with herself, but everyone around her inexplicably thought she was just the greatest. She was the very definition of first semester writing class, strong female character that you see in bad media all the time. I've always loved her design though. Her outfit was varied, colorful, and... yep.
Haha, video game has boobs, haha, boobies, bobbers, bibble, baps, bips, haha.
Luckily though, she has been massively course-corrected. She's much kinder to her comrades, collected, and best of all, nowhere near as needlessly strong female character-y as she was before. That's not to say that she's been transformed into a shy little girl that everyone needs to take care of. Far from it, in fact. She's still just as capable as she was in the other maps. It's just that her attitude about it has taken a complete 180. Her relationship with the other characters is better as well. Like, she and Shaw have some good moments together where she thanks him for taking care of her after her father was arrested. Hell, even her attitude towards Diego is less combative, and she feels more like a friend giving the other a hard time than someone who actually hates him. Probably so this shot doesn't feel so out of place later on. If I had to complain, I'd say that she still swears a little too much. But then again, so do I. We all have our vices. One of the strongest elements of the map's story, and I feel like I'm using that phrase a lot, and its most surprising, is the ending. As we all know, Zombies, and Call of Duty in general, has had a really hard time with endings. For reference, here's a complete list of troublesome endings in the franchise. Moon, Origins, Ghost Campaign, Exodus, Advanced Warfare's campaign, Descent, Black Ops 3's campaign, Revelations, The Beast from Beyond Director's Cut, Zombies in Spaceland Director's Cut, and The Frozen Dawn.
Alright.
Ancient Evil breaks the cycle, see what I did there? And ends on a very high note. After defeating Perseus, our heroes return to the Temple of Apollo to free the Oracle. The Oracle in turn frees Alistair, and Scarlet, being the ascended brainlet that she is, sends everyone else off to go get Alistair. Once downstairs, the others come across a petrified Alistair along with members of the Order. Diego runs upstairs to tell Scarlet that there's trickery afoot, but he arrives too late and the Oracle kisses Scarlet to gain her knowledge of the modern world.
Oh, that's hot. That's hot.
But being the hero that he is, Diego drags Scarlet out of harm's way as Medusa walks off to open the library and take over the world. There's so much to love here, primary being all the questions it raises. The Oracle says that Scarlet doesn't know what she really is yet. So what exactly is she? Is she a demigod? The chosen one in some long-forgotten prophecy? Who knows? What the hell is Diego going to do now that he's the only good boy left? Is Alistair dead for good? And what was he doing with the Order? Was he secretly part of the Order, or did they convince him to set aside their differences to defeat a greater evil? Where is the High Priest of Chaos in all of this? He was shown in the Dead of the Night Director's Cut music video, and Craig keeps bringing him up in promotional material, so he's probably not dead. This is when you know you've crafted a solid ending, when the audience is left with questions and they're eagerly awaiting the answers. Unlike Classified and Blood of the Dead, where the only question I'm left with is it time for death yet? Now we move on to the little things that aren't really large enough to warrant their own segment, but are certainly worth mentioning. The Pegasus flight and Perseus encounter IGCs can now be skipped in-game. The shield dropped by the Geganese now has a power-up effect around it, which is great, since because of my horrible mole vision, I would often miss where it dropped. Let's start the bad with the map's biggest new addition. You see, it's funny because the Giganese is both physically big, but can, in theory, also have a big effect on moment-to-moment gameplay. Oh, I slay me. The map's new mini-boss, the Giganese. These are, without any exaggeration, one of the most poorly designed mini-bosses in Zombies. Not only are they massive bullet sponges, they're also completely unengaging to fight. But what exactly makes them so, for lack of a better term, boring to fight? Well, their movement speed is a big contributor. They move about as fast as a docile Whistling from Nazi Zombies. The biggest difference between these two is that Whistlings were an effective area of denial enemy, whereas the Giganese is simply annoying. If you tried to sneak past a Whistling, it would almost always damage you considerably, meaning that you either had to go around or shoot it to draw its attention. In contrast, the Geganese has a very slow melee speed, meaning that you can slide right past it and usually be just fine. Okay, they suck at area denial, but what about their ranged attack? I hear you ask. Well, those are a bust as well. Their spears have the potential to deal up to 100 damage on a direct hit, but if you keep even a casual eye on the Geganese, you'll notice he has a fairly long windup for this attack, and the projectile doesn't track you after it's thrown, so all you have to do is, again, slide away. In worst case scenario, you'll take about 25 damage. As for his shield blast, again, it has a fairly long and obvious charge up time. Just get behind one of the numerous pieces of level geometry and you'll be just fine. So he's completely ineffective at area denial and doesn't pose much of a threat from a distance, so all you're left with is a shambling bullet sponge. The Geganese is an enemy that, much like the Kraken and the Ninja Zombies, needs a full-on design rework to be a worthy addition to the map. And that's all I really dislike about the map's gameplay. So I guess it's time to get on to my writing gripes. The biggest, and one of the few, problems I have with the map's writing is the character of the Oracle. It was way too obvious that the Oracle was going to somehow be the villain. Throughout the map and the Oracle's tales, her vulnerability, desperation, and disdain for the gods is way too overplayed. So when the twist came along that she was actually a villainous force, I was less than shocked. Also, if she's been locked up for 1,000 years, how exactly did she get down to the basement to turn Alistair and the Order into stone? Another thing about the story that bugs me is how the Order got the shaft again. One of my favorite parts of 9 was how heavy their presence was, but in every map after, they've been kept to the shadows, rarely making an appearance or receiving any development whatsoever. I don't know if this is because the writers are trying to phase them out of the story to focus on the main crew and Medusa or what, but it's frustrating to see them so underutilized. To pad time, I want to talk about one issue that other players may find with the map. The fact that early game setup is so heavily scripted and cinematic. For those that play the maps a lot, the repetition of going to the amphitheater, encountering Perseus, fighting the Geganese after grabbing the bridle, riding Pegasus, uncovering the Überspringen, and all that may eventually get tiresome. I know you're probably sick of these comparisons at this point, but I've been playing the game a lot recently, so bear with me. This is a problem that some players had with the Final Reich as well. The early game setup was almost always the same every single match, which led to a feeling of repetition. I don't have this problem with either map myself, but I figured I'd bring it up regardless. And that's all for the bad. I told you there wasn't much. Not since the Final Reich have I had this little negative to say about a map, which is honestly so refreshing. Okay, with the bad out of the way, let's get on to my favorite part of the video, the nitpicks. Occasionally, and for reasons I can't exactly pinpoint, the specularity on the skin materials of our characters goes up tremendously. It's like when you'd play Carentan on World War II and they up the specularity to simulate being wet in the rain. Except here, you're bone dry. Oh, who am I kidding? Nobody played World War II because World War II bad, am I right? Yeah, boy. No, but really, Carentan is an awful, awful map. Perseus's voice acting is a bit too over the top. I get that the tone of Chaos is a little bit more lighthearted than Aether, but Perseus just straight up sounds like a Saturday morning cartoon character.
And you, Pegasus, you have forgotten who your master is!
The filter used on the Oracle's voice in the map's intro is inconsistent with the one used in 9. For comparison,
the knowledge you seek was not intended for mortal man. Did you find what you were looking for?
there's quite a few animation/sound errors in the map's intro. For example, when Shaw gets spooked, his mouth remains closed. And when Diego says,
"Know thyself." I hope you know what you're doing, Scarlet.
his mouth moves out of sync. Why isn't this cultist body visible in-game? If a Blightfather goos up the Essex wall by, the FX will still be visible in the outro IGC. In this shot, something is up with the Oracle's body mesh. Either the neck is disconnected from the chest mesh, or her hood mesh is clipping. The imagery of Medusa wearing the cultist mask is way too silly to take seriously.
The film's music is very heavily insisting that this is serious, but this is just too goddamn ridiculous.
After Bruno kills Shaw, spoilers, his wounds are mended, which Okay, I can buy that the staff did, but what about his clothes? Wouldn't they still be stained with really bad blood decals? When holding the redeemed hand of Oranos, you can occasionally grow a second left hand. I've only been able to get this to happen with the hand of Oranos, but it might be possible with others. Even more hilarious, the new Phantom hand is actually the view model for Ultimus Dempsey. The stories are connected after all. In the boss fight IGC, Scarlet is wearing Diego's heirloom, despite it being lost in the intro to Voyage of Despair. Someone probably just forgot to hide the tag on the model. Stormbound isn't really my kind of music. Okay, I'm trying really hard to find things to whine about, but it's really hard this time around. Which I guess is a good thing. So overall, Ancient Evil was a massive surprise. The map is fun as hell, the visuals are unique, the quest is great, the characters have been massively improved, and the story leaves on a really intriguing cliffhanger that makes me eager to see where Chaos goes from here. Does this mean I'll like where it ends up going? Not necessarily. Only time will tell. But for now, it's time to return to Aether. Hooray. Honestly, I'd rank Ancient Evil alongside my personal top tier maps like Mob of the Dead, Shadows of Evil, and The Final Reich.
Hang on, hold the phone, Rizzo.
I hear you so rudely interrupt.
Ancient Evil is nothing like Mob or Final Reich, and also, Final Reich, top tier. Yeah, okay, shill.
That's true, but just because they're all very different, doesn't mean I can't love them all the same. I love the spooky atmospherics and accessibility of Final Reich and Darkest Shore, but I also really dig more lighthearted maps like Zombies in Spaceland and 5. Now Ancient Evil, along with 9, scratch the itch for a much more fantastical adventure, filled with magic and over-the-top action. Well, that's all for today. Next up on the review docket is, well, that's where my surprise comes into play that I mentioned in my last update video. I want you guys to pick the next map review, with a few stipulations of course. Number 1, nothing from Black Ops 4. I strongly dislike the environment surrounding this game, from the community to the constant anti-consumer practices, to Treyarch's complete lack of communication. It's just a mess. Number 2, nothing I've covered super recently, so I'm not going to review The Beast from Beyond or 5 again. And that's all. Be sure to leave a comment below with which map you'd like to see next time, or if someone else has already commented your choice, thumbs up that comment. The highest rated comment will be what I cover next time. Anyway, I'd like to thank you all for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Take care.
Bruno? What are you doing?